So now on, we start with the question and answers. I see some raising hands, but I'm going to start with the questions in the take time order. So I think this one was from the topic of Erik. And it says from Awesome, due to the improper tags and labeling, it is difficult to find the resources attached to specific applications and their owner. Also, FinOps practitioner having less privileges to check the insight in the cloud, how to overcome this challenge, where you can get the application insight from the for the cost optimization perspective. Erik?
Ooh, well, it's a tough one. Yeah, it's why FinOps was also created, like to overcome these problems. But the thing is, I think there's several things you need to do here. One is implement some control policies for tagging. Okay, work on that. For example, you could first make some how can I say, some report that says how high your tagging coverage is. Okay, and also find out how much of your cost is not possible to allocate at the moment to the correct cost center, budget, team, whatever. Okay, and get some executive buy-in to do something about it. Okay, because with that you can simply also say, let's make it that you cannot launch anything if it's not properly tagged. That's a very simple thing to do on most clouds. If it's not tagged, you simply cannot run it. So done. Okay, so that's solved. Obviously, you need to discuss it, implement it gradually, maybe also start with the non-production environments, because otherwise, if you have a pipeline to start production stuff and it doesn't start because the tag is missing or misspelled, you will not make friends. But if you go gradually there and prepare basically the teams and tagging, and also one other thing is there are some tools that provide virtual tags that you basically say that any form of misspelling, maybe you converge into one tag. I would say that's a nice feature to have, but it's sugarcoating the problem. So you should not, in my opinion, go that way. Really go clean up the tags, implement them, enforce them through policies, and then you're good to go.
Yeah.
Then the second part of your question, the FinOps practitioner having less privilege to check the inside in cloud. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that, but the thing is, if you need information, get it. As in, if you need a tool, buy it. If you need more access rights to see, I don't know, the workloads like Kubernetes get access into the memory consumption stuff, get it. It's something that you simply should say, okay, I don't have the information now. Any kind of piece of missing information, transform that into a task that you need to work on, liaise with people, and get the access rights there. Okay, that is the only way to overcome this challenge, actually. Because otherwise, what you do is you give yourself an excuse to not do something about it because you don't have all the information. And
Yeah.
that's it. So basically, make a list of everything you need, and every missing item there is a task for you to go through. Talk to your manager, boss, whatever, and that's it. There's no nice way around this.
Yeah. I completely agree. Thanks for the thoughtful answer. Erik, so next one was Alexander asking about how would you recommend calculating waste found for KPI reports. I think this is super interesting. I don't know if Aviv, do you have thoughts on that one?
Yeah, so I think that's like the $1 million question, right? How do you calculate waste in terms of KPIs? I think the first step is that you really need to know about that waste, right? So I think you need to have some system in place if you build it internally or use some third party and so on to basically govern all of that waste. And then after you have that in mind, because at the end of the day, if you're only looking at the 20 things that basically the cloud native providers provide you, this is very, very basic. So it's not a good measure of, for a KPI. But when you actually look at the entire scope or like a big scope of waste and shadow waste, then you could actually give an efficiency score based on that, right? And then you could actually compare it between the different departments and so on. So I think the number one thing is first to identify all sources of waste, or the most common ones, including shadow waste, and only then you could switch to talking about the real KPIs. You could do something in between. You could start looking at all of the recommendations that you currently have with the cloud native or whatever tools you're using, and then create an efficiency score. My only point there is that this would be very behind, because it wouldn't be the clear understanding of the efficiency, because it lacks a lot of shadow waste that we just discussed and so on.
Okay. Yeah, it's the $1 million question for sure. Like relating to KPIs is what every business wants. So yeah, great answer, and great question, Alexander. Next one, well, it's a kind of a question like, this is a big deal. Who is looking at versions of Python by Erik? I think that's a super interesting point that Aviv raised regarding the Python optimization capabilities based on the version. It's a super simple thing to do, yet many of us, and I include myself, don't necessarily do it. So really a good advice from Aviv on that regard. And I think the next one in order was Aaron, in terms of asking. So I will enable you now the microphone. So Aaron, whenever you have the raised hands, I don't know if you want to ask. If not, we can go with the next one.
It was an errant hand, but glad to catch the kind of second part of the conversation, and I appreciate you guys all sharing your insights.
Okay. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks. Really appreciate the kind words. Okay, so moving on to the next one, Nilofar. Thanks for being here, Nilofar. I'm going to try and summarize because it's a bit long. So basically, she asks about that it is crucial to understand the business rationale behind each decision as well. Not all of them would necessarily translate into actionable items. So additionally, addressing these issues will require both time and resources, which ultimately add cost. Human resources are a cost that everyone should have in mind. In situations like this, how would you approach balancing the need to optimize costs with the business priorities driving these architectural choices? This is super interesting question.
Yeah.
So what you need to do there is the following. Apply some product management. So whether it's a feature that needs to be developed, or whether it's a optimization of any kind, we know, as you also stated in your question, that there will be resources consumed for this. So you should be able to calculate the cost of implementing it, which also should include the opportunity cost of leaving other stuff behind. Okay, so obviously, if you have one engineering team, you cannot do the work of two engineering teams just because you add something. Okay, so we need to schedule that. So in that sense, you should calculate the business value of the cost reduction, or the performance efficiency increase, whatever it is, and align it strategically with basically the company strategy. Okay, so if the company strategy is to ship features fast and quick, okay, because they want to conquer the market, they want to ship new features, or they have customers waiting, SLAs and commitments, then obviously this needs to go into your consideration. Because what you otherwise can do is the following. Let's say that your company is more software oriented and has sprints regularly. I don't know, it's like 6 sprints per year, 4 sprints per year, or big sprints, okay, not small sprints, but or let's call them development cycles. Okay, so it's more generic. So it's oftentimes difficult to get a slot for optimization in these development cycles. So what a friend of mine did at Spotify actually was they took the least loaded development cycle, which was the one in January, I think, and said, you know what, let's take that, no features development in January. We only look at optimizing efficiency every January for the large thing, re-architecting, making A/B tests with high load and stuff like that. So basically, they got cost optimization development cycle each year, which was much easier to sell to the execs because then they know, okay, no new features in January, but that's fine. We know that already. So they plan out and the marketing also in that way. Because otherwise what you risk is that you have a feature and it's too big, will explode any kind of feature planning with the development teams, or you have small items that never get enough priority, so we'll just swap over into the next development cycle and never gain enough priority. So I think these are the two that you need to do. You need to provide the business value of the cost optimization, including the opportunity costs, and maybe also have an optimization development cycle per year or something.
I just want to add one more thing. If I add, I completely agree with you, Erik. I want to add that I think that what we try to do, with customers we see is actually also reducing the friction and the time it takes engineers to actually handle these issues. Because at the end of the day, cost is not a big priority for folks, right? Like you said, like it's basically features. They care about performance. They care about reliability and so on. And security and cost is down below. So I think many times when we try to go through the path of product and so on, this is good maybe for bigger things, but I think for other things, it's very worthwhile to see how you could actually minimize the time it takes an engineer to investigate and fix an issue. So when a FinOps person comes to an engineer and tells him vaguely, there might be an issue here, then that takes a long time. An engineer it would basically take them 1 or 2 days to investigate and fix, and then they keep postponing it. They would never do it, right? Because they have higher priorities. Our philosophy is that if you actually lower down, you basically reduce the time by giving them very actionable insight. This is exactly just like in today's lecture. This is exactly what we see in whatever, DynamoDB, right? These are the metrics. This is the evidence. This is actually what you need to do. It's just like one click in DynamoDB to switch from that to that and so on. Of course, you need to test it, but this is it and so on. I think as you make it more, as FinOps people need to take more responsibility when they deliver and communicate this to the engineer to make it very, very lean. So then this would enable engineers to do it like nuggets. They would just do them, right? Because it doesn't take 1 or 2 days to do something. It takes 1 to 2 hours to investigate and fix an issue. So I think that's also what you described is part of the the strategic way to approach it, and I completely agree. I think at the same time we need to think as a community, how do we actually minimize the time it takes an engineer, so these things would just be things that people do regardless of just the sprints and so on. This is the situation I think we should aim as a community, just basically making it easier for folks.
Totally agree on that one. And I think there is an additional question for Aviv. How can you show the value of Adaptive 6 is different from an optimization recommendation such as AWS Cost Optimization Hub or any of the native, let's say, offering by the cloud providers?
Oh yeah, sure thing. So I think the cloud providers are doing a great job and so on. But one, they do it just for their clouds. Adaptive 6 is multi-cloud. And second of all, this is our claim to fame. We focus on shadow waste. We find more than 100 different types of waste and shadow waste across the various clouds, across platform as a service. And we're actually growing this to 500. So I think it's very easy to see side by side. If you want, you could email me afterwards. But it's very easy to see side by side when you test any tool in the industry, not just the cloud native providers, and you compare it to Adaptive 6. I think it would be very easy to see the potential waste that we discover. Some of the examples I gave today, these are just the tip of the iceberg of what we typically detect, and we haven't seen too many tools in the industry that really do these type of things. And you mentioned before, the Python is just one example, and there are many more. So if you want, you can hit me up later at avivre@adaptive6.com, and I would love to share more.
Yeah, you can reach out. I also wrote the email on the chat, but you will have it on the call recording as well, and on the presentation it would be available. And there is a last one from Mausam again. Thanks for being so active on the questions, everyone. Really appreciate it. So that's a question as well as a point of view which I am facing right now. We have some good opportunity to right size the dev environment, and the architects are not agreeing. Business takes their advice more seriously, and this is a big roadblocker in FinOps as of now in my organization. So any, let's say, solutions or ideas to Mausam, Aviv, or Erik?
Yeah, I would say get some business value of that, as in how much money are we talking about? Because if it's $50 per month and the architect says they're needing it, then maybe the ROI of your optimization isn't even that high. But if we are talking about, I don't know, 50K per month difference, okay, and they don't simply agree, then they should state the business value, because you said it was a development environment, okay? So ask them to provide their business value of having such an expensive resource and compare it with the business value of optimizing that downside. Obviously, you need to back that up with some usage and performance metrics, so you can show that resource has been more or less idling or sleeping, and then say, hey, we can save this much money. What is your business case for keeping it on 24/7 at this cost? So that's it. Ask them for numbers to justify using the resource at that level.
Right. I want to add to that essentially I think that engineers, they care somewhat about cost, but what they really care about many times is efficiency. Right. So I think when you talk the lingo of engineers and you talk about underutilization and so on and less efficiency, I think that could also help in that regards. And I think this relates to also my earlier point, evidence. Right? If you provide evidence and you basically show them, right? This is what you basically are doing. This is the last 2 years. This is the P95 or the max or the average, and they just get to see it. I think this would, together with what Erik mentioned, which is what the business value is, right? This should basically get them to feel somewhat uncomfortable by knowing that this actually exists and so on. I don't know the exact nature of their, the friction point with you talking to them. There are various points, but I think what Erik touched and what I'm touching is 2 of the or 3 of the main points that typically we hear from engineers.
Yeah. I mean, everyone is. So engineers are focusing on efficiency. If you relate it more and you try to ease the way to the architects and you make it easier, and also you relate it to performance and more efficiency and easiest management, especially, which can happen, for example, on serverless instead of Kubernetes or whatever. Any suggestions on that matter would probably help you sell, let's call it that way, the case to engineers, which sometimes are tough to deal with.
By the way, the example with the Python is a clear case of additional efficiency. It would basically be more efficient, the workload, and you have a cost benefit. So when you have these cases, right sizing is another example. When you have these cases and so on, it's good.
Indeed, totally agree. Okay, let me see if there are more. Okay, now last one in the extra time. Can you suggest easier ways to view or export metrics from someone without the scripting, coding knowledge, like API, CLI, Python SQL query, etc.? I believe, and before everyone answers, on the dashboard tooling, there are definitely some, exporting metrics tool on CSV. Normally, CSV is a format that is available in everywhere. And from there, you can work on Excel or you can work from whatever. In terms of viewing, almost every provider has a viewing system where you can relate log metrics, or specifically anything that you want to measure. The only problem that you probably need is, or you will probably have, is to configure the actual metric and being able to be having the skill to actually know where each of those are. Because there are a lot of them and you can configure almost anything. But with log metrics, I think you can have almost anything related to compute, storage, memory, etc. You can almost do anything with already a native tool, even though, other providers have it. Aviv, any inputs on that one?
No, I think you summed it up perfectly.
Thanks. Let me see if there are more. I think that's all. Yeah, finalize, and this is done as well. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining today. It's been a pleasure to have you all here. Thanks Erik for the talk, and thanks Aviv of course for the talk. It's been a pleasure. Thanks everyone for joining. I hope you had a good time. Tomorrow we'll send you the recording and the slides. See you next time. We will be doing this frequently. So heads up and stay tuned in LinkedIn and the newsletter because we will do more of this. Thanks everyone. And yeah, see you in the next one.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.